All right, everybody. I'd like to welcome our next guest here to Let's Talk Dubs. My next guest is from Santa Rosa, California. You guys all know him from Vintage Warehouse. He's got some pretty dope rides, some slammed, crazy model buses, coach built kind of stuff, and some bent window coupes and all kinds of cool stuff. I'd like to welcome from Santa Rosa, I'd like to welcome Greg Banfill from Vintage Warehouse. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so I wanted to kind of get into it real quick. You know, one of the first things I always kick this off is kind of what got you into VWs? What started off that whole VW thing for you?
It started with having a bunch of friends that were into Volkswagens and being around them and kind of seeing what they were doing. And what actually got me into my first VW was I was into old American hot rod, lowriders, Impalas, that kind of thing. And I actually went to go look at a Impala for sale. I found on in the newspaper. And when I got there, it turned out to be a 4-door. So of course I didn't want it. And when I went to leave, there was what I thought was a Volvo parked over in the trees on the side bushes thing, and ended up being a 64 sunroof notchback. And the guy's house had burned down and he needed money and needed to get all the cars out of there. So I bought that car instead of the Impala. And that's what got me into owning a Volkswagen. And then all my friends kind of taught me from there of what I needed to do and not to do.
So your first VW was a 64 notchback.
Correct. Sunroof.
So a sunroof. Yeah. That's a pretty nice first VW. So you get this Volkswagen and then you're into American muscle. What is it about the VW model, about the Volkswagen, that just kind of keeps you hooked in?
I think it was more I guess at that point in time, they were different than what everybody else was doing. You know, I was into, like I said, the old Impalas and stuff and mini trucks, and everybody was doing that. So I've always been into things that are different than what everybody else is doing. So that's kind of what got me hooked a little bit. And then the more I learned, the more I thought, hey, you can really change these things up pretty easily without spending a ton of money. Like this might be the way to go. And, first one, second one, third one, next thing you know, I got a bunch of them, and like, hey, this is fun. So that's where it took off from.
Nice. And so part of what you do over there, give us kind of a rundown of what you do for those that are hearing you for the first time and maybe aren't familiar with you. What does Vintage Warehouse do?
Well, my main thing right now is I do suspensions, transmissions, basically all the running gear, engines, disc brakes, narrowed beams. That's my bread and butter. That keeps me busy all the time. And then I have a few cars that clients bring me, a lot of return customers. I don't do body and paint work. I don't. So I have guys that take their cars, I pull them apart, they take them, have the body and paint work done, bring them to me, and I build them up for them from there. And then I got the guys that are bringing in cars for oil changes and tune-ups and, miscellaneous small jobs here and there. But the majority of what I do is suspension work. And then because that takes up so much time, I don't have a retail store. I have an online store that I sell a bunch of parts all over the world in. So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get to also, was when I first met you. I met you, seeing you down at the VW Classic and the Vegas Bug and all this stuff, and I always saw you had these super cool slam buses, but you were always selling kind of Vintage Warehouse gear, and then you were always the guy to go by that kind of had some real rare jewelry for sale, just some, like, you didn't have dollar parts and $5 parts, you had like really expensive stuff on display, and I'm like, just conversation pieces. I'm like, man, where'd you get that? How'd you find that? So my introduction to you was always, you were kind of the guy that always had like some super cool, really rare stuff. How did you get into the vintage parts thing? Because it's not just, you're not selling like reproduction Taiwan steering wheels and stuff like that. Your main focus is mostly like NOS, OG stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know what really set it off originally, but I didn't like all the new stuff, and it wasn't really available when I really started getting into it. And way back then, pre-internet, really, you didn't go online and find stuff. You had to go travel around and buy it. And luckily I had friends around the world that I would be able to go to car shows, and a lot of stuff's cheaper in Europe. So I'd go over there and I'd buy a ton of stuff that we didn't have here, ship it back, and then I'm the guy with all the cool stuff because nobody else did that. The internet has kind of killed that, and now everybody does it, so that's okay. But that got me going originally, and like you said, people kind of knew me for that. So then I'd have people coming to me looking for things, and I could kind of put my feelers out the contacts I had and find you something that you're looking for that you can't find anywhere else, and you kind of stuck.
Tell me about the bus behind you, the bus and the placard behind you. Tell me about that bus right there. What's the story behind that bus? And give our listeners an idea like where they can find that. What does it say? Slamomatic?
That's the Slamomatic. That was I'll call it the original bus I did my first narrowed beam in, which was probably back in 2000, 2001 maybe. And I'm the internet will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I bet you I was probably the third guy to make a narrowed beam. I know George at the butcher shop did one. He told my buddy Jason about how to do a narrowed beam. I ran into Jason at my buddy Blue's house, and I was looking at this bus that had huge 195, 45, 15 tires on the front, and it was still super dumped. And how did you do that? And he explained it to me. And so as soon as I knew it could be done, I knew I could figure out how to do it. So I did that bus. I bought it from a friend of mine up in Oregon. It was just covered in rust, and I just polished it out. There was no rust repair done. I redid the motor in it, and I did the straight axle, first narrowed beam, drop spindles, the whole bit, and kind of became known as the Slamomatic. And if you want your car to look like that, you call me and you say, hey, I want the Slamomatic setup, and that's what I can do for you. So it kind of stuck, and that's I don't actually know where the car is now. I've learned the hard way a couple of times that when you build something and it's catches everybody's attention, if you ever plan on selling it, you do it right then. Because when I first took that bus out to Red Barn and Kelly Park, when I first finished it, I could have sold it for 3 times what I ended up actually selling it for, like 4 or 5 years later, because everybody wanted it, and it went to the UK, and then the last time I heard it was in Germany, and it's still driving around. And I've talked to a few people who've seen it since then, and it's still holding up. So I'm pretty proud of that one. And if I could buy it back at an uninflated price, I would, just for the nostalgia of it. So
yeah, the sentimental value has a lot to do with it sometimes, especially when you're going into uncharted territory
right.
in respect to like lowered cars, because it's so funny. I was talking with someone not too long ago, and we were speaking about the narrowing of the front beams, right, to get more tire in the front, because that was always the challenge with bugs and buses and all that stuff. Even to where that's why all the cars are all hacked out everywhere you see them, and it's like the concept is so simple, yet it took people decades to figure out how to narrow a front beam to kind of get it wider. But so that's the original Slamomatic. What issue of magazine is that the Slamomatic is in? Is it
that
Hobby
is
Hobby
no, that's
W's or Trend?
Ultra VW.
Ultra
I,
VW.
I get no love from the U.S. magazines. Anything I've ever had featured has always been and that actually was after I sold it. It was featured. It wasn't when I had it. I've had 3 or 4 cars like that after I sell them, somebody else features them, and at least I get credit. But never when I've owned a car, except for my 2 cell flaps. Air Mighty featured those for me. But yeah, that was like 2005 Ultra VWs.
So maybe one of the reasons why it probably wasn't featured is because back in 2000, 2001, up to 2005, American magazines weren't featuring any patina, rusty. It kind of took the Americans a little while to catch on to what was kind of the new style. And Europe has been doing that for quite a while, and it's interesting. So I'm gonna pose a question to you now. So what's your thought in respect to, now we've seen the patina look, and then I think we can both agree that sometimes you can see the patina look taken a little too far. And so kind of there's a fine line there. You know what I mean? So according to Greg Banfill, what's the line of demarcation where it's cool and it goes over the top? Like in your opinion, just for your 2 cents.
When it's gone too far, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah. When does the patina look gone too far on a car?
when it's not safe, first of all, and when you got holes in your panels and rot basically, like that's a bunch of surface rust, but it was a solid car. When you got your rockers, you can see through them, your feet are going through the floor, and you're taking a grinder to your fenders to grind off the paint to get it to bare metal so it'll rust. It's gone a little far at that point to me. I'm not going to be one of those super stock guys that's like, oh, it's only original once and that's the way, and everything I have I'm going to leave it because it's original. Like at some point, yeah, it's original, but it's gone. You need to fix it. That's the point when the patina is not, it's not patina, it's just garbage at that point.
Yeah, yeah. So we talked about with starting to narrow your beams the first time. Is that how you kind of started getting into suspension? Was from narrowing the bus suspension and doing some things like that kind of lit your fire to start pursuing suspension altercations and things like that?
Definitely. That was just because I'd been pulling leaf springs and putting drop spindles on and running temporary spares because I wanted to be as low as possible. And then I found out, wow, I can do this, a safer way that's actually more drivable. Yeah, let me figure out how to do that. And the suspension that's in that bus is probably archaic, or not archaic. What's the word I'm looking for? Like it's just outdated compared to
Yeah,
what I do now.
antiquated. Yeah, like
There you go. Compared to what I do now, it's not the same, but definitely got me, going on how to do it. And I actually did that bus and I did a 56 panel at the same time. And the panel was actually the jig. I didn't know what I was going to do. So we stripped the beam down, put it back in the bus, and then started cutting because I didn't want to start cutting and narrowing. And all of a sudden my beam isn't going to fit back in. So after I did that first beam, I pulled it out and then we used it as a mock up and how to make a jig to do everything from there on out. So,
so that's 2001. So right then, I think the big talk about that bus was like, crap, that thing's laying on the ground and he's got 195s on it. Like, how's he doing that? So that was kind of the big deal, when you'd come up on that bus. So now from where that is today to where I think maybe your sales flap is lower than that bus.
definitely. My sales flap, I'll pat myself on the back and I'll tell you, I'll put it up against any static drop bus. It's the most comfortable riding bus I've ever had, and it's laid out, and it's got old, technology too, because it was pre-hybrid spindle, so it's got stock drop spindles. The frame rails had to be notched to clear the tie rods. It's not notched with 8-inch pipe to run your tie rods through. It's just got the notch that it's needed and a raced steering box, and that's it. And that thing runs on 165 50s, I think. It's still some small tires, but I wanted it low, and it gets around. You couldn't really see out the windshield. So
Right. You have a 1 inch foam gardening pad to sit on to drive the bus.
right, it was a little more than that, but it was definitely a different experience, that's for sure.
So you like rolling them like that, like the sales flap. That's a good driving, good. I mean, no issues cruising that thing, huh? Nice and solid and doesn't bother.
Yeah, I would take that thing anywhere. Like if I had to drive it to Los Angeles today, I would. The great thing about that is I don't have to because I have a normal car I can drive every day. But
Options.
but I would trust it to go there, definitely.
It's funny you bring that up because I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and we're talking about the what's your philosophy on going down to the classic weekend? Are you looking forward to spending 9 hours in a bus doing 72 miles an hour top speed? And I mean, even with a big motor, you know what I mean? And getting down there after 9 hour drive and then hanging out for the whole weekend? Or I think I know the answer to this, but what's
Well, the answer is the last time I went to the classic, which is now who knows what weekend it is, Prado Classic, who knows, but I flew. I didn't And then I rented a Tahoe and drove it around while I was down there. But
and
uh, every other time I've gone, I've taken my dually and my 2 car trailer or an enclosed trailer, and I've loaded cars on, and I've driven down there, did my thing, and then turned around because I had to be back to work on Monday. I couldn't leave the car show Sunday at who knows what time beat after being up for 12 hours or 24 hours and drive home and function the next day. So we would I would not drive my bus. No.
yeah, so it's interesting. You bring up a point that I kind of wanted to discuss with you too. It's another one of my favorite topics to discuss. There's the Prado Classic. How do you feel being from out of town? How do you feel it's affected that weekend?
I think it's a bummer. Same as you. The guys that are local, cool. Now they have weekends. 2 or 3 weekends in a row to go do stuff. For guys from out of town, I'm not gonna go down there, come home, go down there, come down. Go back and forth 3, 4 times or 2, 3 times, and I can't just go down there and stay. I got kids and stuff to do, or I need to be home. So
Yeah.
it's I wish everybody could get on the same page and kind of maybe put their egos aside and work together and make one big show, like it used to be where there was, what it was like, almost like things started Thursday, then Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday you were burnt out and you wanted to go home anyway. But I wish that could happen again. But I think even this year, like Prado is kind of the big deal now, but the Octo meet isn't even the same weekend. So who
Yeah.
knows how that's going to work out.
I know, me being from Vegas and I've got a lot of friends, you and a bunch of other people that I've met just from going to car shows and kind of seeing it. And although we're not from that local area, we all share the bond of being into VWs, and we all might not have the same exact style, but kind of the repetition of seeing each other on a consistent show weekend, creating friendships. I mean, to me, one of my favorite things, which is why I love Kelly Park. I mean, Kelly Park is just, besides that miserable 9-hour drive from Vegas to get there, it's an awesome weekend. I mean, between Red Barn and Miguel's open house and Mark Merrill's open house, and then the show, it's almost akin to what the Classic was. The real glue that was the Classic, my opinion, my 2 cents, and I don't know how you feel about it. My 2 cents was the hotel parking lot.
I agree with you 100%. And there isn't an official host hotel, but there is a hotel that, we found that's right around the corner from Miguel's place, and which is obviously right down the road from the show on Sunday. And we kind of try to fake the Classic vibe there, but it's, usually 20 of us instead of 200 of us.
Right.
But I'm the same way. And I'm sure I'm a little biased because it's kind of the local show for me, even though it's 2.5 or 3 hours away. But, that one I actually drive my cars to. I've gone to that one before and taken 3 or 4 cars and caravan down there and had people drive cars for me, because that I don't mind doing, and it's a good time, and it's a bunch of things strung together like you're saying. It's from Friday night till Sunday afternoon, and you got something to do the whole time. And it's not the good old days when you had your mega crew cab super long bed dually and you're out there doing burnout competitions with everybody in front of Miguel's shop. But that hasn't happened for a while, but it's still a good time.
Hey, I would say it could happen this year because, in the work somewhere in the back cave, there's a 51 split window with a 2650 Type 4 with 48s on it that's just waiting to hit the streets. I just don't know when I'll get it back, but believe me, the next time you see me on a new car, that's the official break-in, is just to smoke the tires till the hides come off. And it's just, that's part of the fun of like coming to these meets, is bringing out your new stuff, showing people what you got, kind of meeting up with these guys. And the Classic, I mean, I've been going to the Classic since, I've been going to the Classic since 2001. And so that's when I got back into VWs after I got a little hiatus for a while when I got married in 99 and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I can't tell you, it's like trying to recreate that whole thing of that Classic weekend is just, and I think it's primarily because the host hotel is big enough where you got your vintage guys there, you got everybody. And then some of us guys that aren't the pro stock vintage guys, we get to raid the toy and lit show and buy some cool stuff, maybe upset the vintage guys because we might pay too much for something or whatever, but we got it on our car. And, but that weekend, hopefully, if they're listening, the guys that put on those Southern California events, I mean, I can tell you from an outsider's perspective, it's kind of what happened to Vegas. Vegas started to become the weekend. And then you started having the division of the two events that were going on, and one thought his was better than the other, and then all it does at the end of the day is dilute the scene. So who knows? Maybe in the next couple of years, something will get going on with another Vegas event if California can't pull it together. Don't get me wrong, I love going to California. I love the weather. I love that whole vibe, but listen, what can you do? You and I are not in control of it, but at least we have the memories to share of all those late nights in the classic parking lot. I mean, I when I finished my bus, I finished it in the parking lot at the Crown Plaza. You know what I mean? Like putting in the fuel pump and like the last little thing. So, but I wanted to get back to some of the stuff that you're doing because a lot of people will see you on Instagram and see some of the stuff that you're doing. So let's take it back a little bit into where you originally came up with the concept to do the king crabs. If people aren't aware right now, tell them what the king crabs are, where the concept comes from, and kind of how that whole thing came together.
Well, the king crabs are a deep 6 Porsche wheel cut down to a 4.5, so the spokes pop out way past the lip, way more than a regular 4.5 would. I credit my buddy Max with the name. I was just always calling them the 6s that I cut down, and then he was like, well, yeah, those are king crabs. So I give Max credit for coming up with the name. As far as actually doing it, it was either a Porsche website or it might even have been the Samba way back in the day. And there was a guy in, I want to say Canada, somewhere who had done that. Someone basically, had shown a picture of here's what this guy did. And again, going back to the beams, as soon as I saw it and I knew it could be done, then I knew I could figure out how to do it. So I got a tape out and started measuring, and I think I figured out how to do it. I've been doing them for quite a while now, and it's nice when I see them pop up on a car, at a show, and I'll be like, oh, that's cool, I did that. I'll say I did it. I'm not out there with the welder welding them, but I got the idea, and I got a guy who does them for me. So it's cool.
So if somebody wants to go to Vintage Warehouse and get a set of king crabs, if you guys haven't seen them, go check out the king crabs on the Samba and Vintage. I don't know if you got pictures up on your website on Vintage Warehouse of the king crabs.
Probably not. That's probably Instagram. I mean, I'm a slacker on that whole thing.
Well, you're not as much a marketeer as you are a VW enthusiast. So that's kind of sometimes, well, listen, you can't be jack of all trades. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, my problem is I see people posting nonstop of all this stuff they do, like it's the newest thing, and I think, well, I've been doing that for 20 years. That's not new, but right. I don't have time to post pictures of it because I'm actually doing it. Like there's not a group of us. There's me.
Right.
So I'm the guy taking pictures, doing the website, building the cars, mailing the stuff. Like I've spread pretty thin, so I guess maybe I should be picking it up on the social media into things and getting it out there, because I feel I'm going to get off on a tangent here, but I feel in this day and age, it's not like it used to be where if you wanted something, you'd go search it out and you try and find it, and then you go, okay, here, this guy can do this. Nowadays, I kind of feel people need to be spoon fed. They need it to be in their face, like they don't want to go look for anything. So if you got to be the guy every day posting a picture of what you can build or what you can do, so then people will know, oh, that's what you do. Like, and I'm not that guy, so maybe that's my downfall.
Well, maybe it just makes the amount of king crabs out there limited. So someone wants a set of king crabs. What's it going to cost them for a set of king crabs?
It's about $1,500 plus a set of core wheels. And
so
that might seem excessive, but go price a set of 6s, and then you realize, when you're taking those and cutting them down, it all adds up. And I was thinking in my head what I was going to say is I just sent a set to Vegas to a guy who's putting them on his bus for Buses by the Bridge, and he paid me $3,500 for a set of wheels, and people thought that was outrageous. And then go price a set of 6s and then put the labor in, and it adds up. So it's not for the faint of heart, but it's definitely cool.
Well, I think at some point, if you either have the skill to do it yourself, or you got to pay to get it done. And the reality is paying for the labor is not cheap. It really takes it takes what it takes to do that and to build those wheels and to do that kind of fabrication. So I think it's awesome. I love seeing, 20 years from now, people be looking for those king crabs. Like, man, there was this dude from Santa Rosa that just disappeared one day with a surfboard, and he made these wheels, man. They're king crabs. So now on the king crabs, do you do any distinctive markings or anything on the back to designate them as your wheels?
No, I figured even if I did, if somebody wanted to fake it, they'd grind it off or something anyway. So I could probably look at a set of wheels. Well, in the early days, when I was doing them, I'd do them and then they'd all go to Al Reed and get chromed and detailed or whatever. So every wheel would have his markings on them somewhere, not mine anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I could probably point them out if I saw them. I know a lot of guys are taking, and I've done it too, taking the new repop wheels and cutting those down instead. The problem is the sixes don't look the same, so you don't get the same effect. But
They don't have the same arc in the spoke.
yeah, everything. It's weird. The 4.5s and 5.5 repop wheels look close enough, and the sixes are just way not even the same ballpark. I don't know why nobody fixes that, but it's not going to be me. So
yeah, let's get back to talking about some of the other things that you're getting into. So, not just rusty relics are your deal. I have seen you with a couple shiny cars. Yeah,
yeah.
you had a split window, didn't you?
Yeah, I've the shiny cars I've had is probably I can name on one hand. It'd be the split window ragtop I had, which I had aside from the suspension and running gear, and adding a bunch of, like we were talking about, accessories. I didn't have anything to do with making it shiny. It was like that when I bought it, and I kind of cleaned it up. My Vendo, which is another sales swap I have, that is a painted done bus that was like that when I got it, and I did all the running gear and and everything on it. And then my 356, which, guess what? I did the engine and the running gear and the interior on it. There's kind of a repetitive thing here that I do. I find cars that are nicer and kind of clean them up, I guess. I don't have the time to build a whole car for myself. Just isn't going to happen right now.
So on the motors, who does your motors?
VW Paradise, or Paradise Motorsports is what they're called now, but VW Paradise.
Oh, okay.
I don't fake that I, do everything, like the whole built not bought thing. Like, I'm not going to say that I build everything, because I don't, and nobody out there does. There's not anybody that's, like you said, forging their own metal and doing whatnot.
Jesse James does. He forges
well,
his own
him.
Damascus steel.
Besides,
and I got to give the guy, I just bust chops, because that's kind of the extreme of both ends. Or people like, at what point, does it become a built or bought car? Because when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, which side of it are you on, and what do you have more dispensable, time or money? And so it depends on where you're at with things. I mean, and this is I think this is an ongoing thread that I constantly have these little bits of conversations. But
with me, it's if there wasn't people buying cars, then I would be probably running a fish store or something, because I would have to find a regular job, because I wouldn't have people coming to me to build stuff for them for their cars. Everybody did it themselves, and well, why would you need me? Why would any of us need any of us? So I'm on the build your what you can, but you're going to buy something, and don't try to act like you're not. And I have no problem giving people credit. I get my engines from Paradise. I get some of my interior from different people, whoever. But I always give people credit. I'm not going to act like I got a sewing machine and I'm sewing interiors and I'm building transmissions and I'm building engines, because that's not what's going on.
Well, I mean, the reality is a lot of, my 2 cents, a lot of what a car is about is the stance and the look. You know what I mean? And that's what grabs your attention. That's what kind of gets you looking at those cars. And it starts with a design concept and someone looking at it saying, this is my vision. I want it to be like this. Now, I built the Bull Run bus, but the Bull Run bus that I built, my buddy Carlos painted it. I bought a TMI interior kit for it. I had a custom carpet kit made. I assembled the whole bus back and forth, but Jake Raby built motor and stuff. So for me, I mean, for a guy without a shop in my garage, build it with a couple newborns. I mean, I love it, and I still hop in that bus, and I don't think there's a big there's too much emphasis on trying to get your street cred. You know what I mean? Because my thought is, you know, get them on the road, get them running, get them driving, get them out there. And when you get them out there people see them, it's what inspires people to go build more stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm all about more cars on the road, the better. So,
Right.
I noticed on your Instagram, you're also getting into some SE bike stuff. What's
So that started with just wanting to do something else with my day when I was home. I have a 4-year-old, so I kind of switched gears on my VW stuff as I was switched to, instead of doing that full time, I was doing that on the weekends and the evenings. So during the day, I'm hanging out with him and we're at home, and I was kind of just getting bored, to be honest with you. So I started building bikes in my garage because I could do it there, and it took off. It was kind of the same thing with cars, as people saw bikes that I was building for myself, and then liked the way they looked, liked what I did, and then started contacting me and, hey, can you do a bike for me? And honestly, it's not what I had planned, but it took off, so I went with it, and it's actually doing pretty good. Keeping
well,
me.
it's interesting because there is that overlap of BMX, skateboarding, all that kind of stuff that was all the rage in the 80s and 90s when kids were coming up, and that was kind of a lot of us. I know that I transitioned from skateboards into cars, and then kind of once I got my car, skateboard went in the trunk, and I don't know if I rode it much for a while after that, but there's that transition. So there's that natural overlap of those styles. So I think there's a natural connection between VW scene, the VW lifestyle. I mean, I've got I'll put on the screen for people watching the video. I've got a hot VWs from 1986 where there's a guy doing a tabletop with some mags over a convertible Ghia, and but it just goes to show like that was the epitome of that time. And I think for guys like us, as we get older, we're not like our parents were, and we're riding bikes when we're a little older than our parents would have ever thought of getting on a bike and doing some stuff like that. But it's a good time. I know that my brother just got me a 29-inch Ripper, big Ripper. So and they're doing rides every weekend, and I'm trying to figure out when I can juggle down it with the kids. But it's a great time, man. And I mean, I got a skateboard still, and I'm a little top heavy to be on it, but I still risk it to get out there and break my neck. So the SE bike thing's going good. So people can get SE bikes from you. Most of that stuff's on Instagram though, on the SE bike stuff that you're doing, or do you have a website for the SE bikes?
Yeah, that's all Instagram, and then Facebook. I didn't want to deal with trying to do another main web page because it kind of seemed outdated, really, that way of doing things. So yeah, it's Instagram, and I couldn't tell you the Instagram name right off the top of my head because it's got a bunch of underscores and whatnot in it, but it's basically Vintage Warehouse Bikes. I think there's an underscore between Vintage Warehouse and Bikes, but it's doing pretty well. It's on there on Instagram. I post a lot of the stuff that I'm building, whether it's for me or other people, and just gives people something else to look at, I guess, while they're sitting on the toilet, probably like everybody else when they're using Instagram.
But that's all right. So gives everybody else something else to look at on your Instagram connection to see what you're up to. So
Right.
so if people want to buy bikes from you, they can just contact you through Instagram and get on the list to have you knock out a bike for them.
Yeah, it's, I mean, realistically, people think these things are tons of money. Yeah, you can spend $4,000 on a crazy bike, but they're not that much money, I guess. And I'm not an SE dealer, so if you want a brand new SE bike, go down to your local bike shop and buy one, because I'm not going to be able to get a deal for you. But if you want me to do some custom work to it, by all means, bring it to me and I can upgrade it for you. And I got a guy who's doing hydro dipping for me now and doing some pretty cool stuff with that. So yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, I really dig what's going on with the bikes and all that stuff coming back. I love seeing it. When I went to Volks World a couple of years ago, they had a vintage BMX show in the middle of in the middle of the car show, which I thought was pretty sweet. And I'm thinking like, man, those guys they had American BMX bikes. Huh? How cool. Who knows? A bunch of them probably came over. They're probably shipped over there, but it's neat to kind of see that coming back. It's nostalgic for us because we were kind of around in that scene. So But so what's coming up for you? What's plans for you over the next little bit? What's the game plan for Vintage Warehouse?
Uh, well, I got some customer cars to finish, and then I have a couple of my own cars I'd like to get done. None of them again are full restorations, but I'd like to get them done and get them out to start driving them to car shows. The main thing I have is a deluxe 15 window that I can actually haul my son in. So I'm going to try to make that a little more reliable, roadworthy than what it is now with the stock, gearing and transmission and whatnot. But make it a little more road ready so I can throw him in the back of that and we can show up at some local car shows in a Volkswagen instead of a Chevy truck like it has been for the last 3 years.
No, I hear you, man. It's awesome to do that to get I think one of the reasons I bought my bus was my son was just born when I bought my bus, and I was trying to figure out how to convince my wife for us to have a cool car that I could build and we could put the whole family in it. So that's it was my leverage to get the bus, and in hindsight it turned out to be a pretty good thing for us. I mean, that's a huge part of our family. So I mean, that's I think the most fun thing about buses is like they're big enough where really, I mean, I've literally had 9 people in my bus classic weekend and like burning tires all the way down the front fender wells because the Bull Run bus isn't tubbed, and but it's just like they're bigger on the inside than a Suburban, and then if you put 2-liter power behind them, they scoot pretty good. So, and then also that's what I wanted to mention about your stuff. Don't get it twisted. If somebody sees you rolling down the road in a Vintage Warehouse mobile, you might have to roll up on somebody with a big romping 2-liter because you got the loffers doing your motors, and those guys don't play around. So I think that's pretty legit. I love the style. I love the whole vibe you got going on with all your stuff. Every time you come up with something, it's pretty cool. And even if it's not 100% my style, I still love it just because it just has that look to it. You just have this way with getting the right wheels in the right car. So speaking of wheels, you used to be pretty big into like finding collectible wheels and stuff like that. What, in your opinion, is like the holy grail set of wheels?
Oh, for me, it's the wheels I'm running on my sales flap, the magnesium torque thrust, Porsche torque thrust. There's, I don't know how many there's made of them. Somebody out there does, but they're impossible to find. And when you do, you hold on to them. You can get aluminum ones. That's cool. I've had those too, but the magnesium ones, they're cool. Aside from that, maybe I'm a Porsche guy, wheels guy, so maybe some deep sevens or something, but those are pretty easy to come by compared to these other ones. So
so you think you could find a set of deep sevens, which are what, the 72 R911 wheels, the rear wheels,
right?
But I mean, you could probably buy a pair. I think they're $2,500 for a pair. Maybe no, I think maybe they're more like $6,000 for a pair because
Probably
they only came on that one car.
right.
And but I know I like some of the the Cosmics, but now it's like one of those things where I bought a Bug for way too much money because the guy had Cosmics on it and he knew he had Cosmics on it, and that's why I paid him too much for his '67 Bug. End result, I ended up with the Cosmics, and now they repop Cosmics all over the place. So I don't know. I get the whole thing with the wheels. I just love a nice vintage set of wheels. So now I'm going to ask you some other questions because you're a guy who's had tons and tons of super rare, vintage, and unique stuff.
Okay.
What is on your list that you're always looking for? Like, if you could find it, man, like you're on the hunt. What rare part, what rare piece, what is it that you're looking for that's out there that somebody in podcast land might hear and be like, I'm calling Greg Banfill because he needs one of these. And I want those 29-inch rippers.
I need someone to design a great website for me. That's what I really need.
Yeah.
Parts wise, I don't know. There was a time when that was my reason for going to swap meets is there was always something I wanted to try and find, or I was building a car and I needed something. And right now I kind of have, I think everything I need for the cars I have. It's always the weird accessory that maybe you didn't know was out there and you see it. And I'm guilty of overpaying, but I buy when I see something I like, I buy it because I don't want to be the guy later on wishing I had it and going, oh man, I wish I would have bought that, because as lame or whatever it sounds, is the money's always going to be there. If you spend the money today, you're going to have it later and you're not going to but you're not going to have that part that you wish you would have bought. So a funny thing was, actually, we were talking about my first car was a sunroof notchback, and I bought one years later. It was the same thing, but it was my the greatest color combo, in my opinion. You could put red interior in anything and I'll buy it. I don't care. That you got me. Black with red interior that's the end of it. And I had a 64 sunroof notchback that was black with red interior. It was a total basket case, but I bought it because that's what it was. And I started buying NOS parts left and right here and there. And, anything I could find, I bought. And then when I ended up selling the car, because I gave up on it, and I listed all the parts for sale, I got just a bunch of hate on the Samba, and the old wine threads on the Type 3 parts. And there was people complaining left and right about my parts. And one guy said, my only complaint is, how did he find all this stuff? Because I've had my car for, X amount of years, and I couldn't find any of this stuff. And he's only had that car for a year, and he has all this stuff. And I responded, I paid for it when it was for sale, instead of complaining about it. And that kind of shut everybody up. And, I'm guilty of it, like I said, but I don't ever want to regret not being able to, have something that I should have bought, and no, maybe I'll wait till later, and then it's gone.
Well, and that kind of goes to say, like, there's only so many of these accessories that are out there, or parts or NOS pieces. And when they come up for sale, it's either put up or shut up. And you really shouldn't complain about it. I mean, not if you want it. If you don't want it and you could take it or leave it, then, go ahead and complain. I guess I don't know what sense that makes. But the reality is, you're going to come across parts, you're going to get an opportunity to buy them. Now, whether you pull the trigger or not. And I think I'm going to guess that probably came from you letting something get away that you just get upset about. And you're like, it's never happening again. I'm not letting it, I had a chance to buy it and now it's not getting away. What's the one that got away from you?
Let me think. I had a chance, and it's a dumb accessory I probably would have never used, but I had a chance to buy the column stick shift for like a split window or an early oval. And it was priced probably a little more than it should have been. And I kind of thought, no, I'm not going to buy it. It was actually at Kelly Park one year. And I thought, no, that's dumb. I'm not buying that. It's too much. And then at the end of the day, when I realized I really wanted it, I went back, and the guy was like, oh yeah, man, I sold that. And I just, would I have ever put it in a car? Probably not, but I wish I had it,
Now, are you telling me the accessory was to take and put a 4 on the tree on a Volkswagen? Yeah. Is that what you're telling me the accessory was?
Correct. It puts the shifter up on the column of the steering column.
Well, I can tell you, I've never even heard of that until just now. This is the first time I'm hearing it, and that's pretty impressive. But I'm assuming those were super early. I'm sure someone on the ensemble straightened us all out with all this stuff, but. There's a guy at home that has a catalog and he's going through page by page, but I think that's legit, man. I mean, that's a pretty. I've never even seen one, so I've seen the student driver accessories where it duplicates the steering wheels and pedals and all that kind of stuff, but I've never seen a column shift for the manual on a Volkswagen. Man, that is pretty rare. Because what have you ever seen another one?
I want to say yes, I have. Can't recall the guy's name right now, but he had one, and I think he had it on the Samba, maybe for sale, and I think he just kind of wanted to brag that he had one at some point, and that was many, many years before I saw this other one. So who knows? Maybe the one I saw was the same one, but yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one in a car, and I'm sure you've been over to Europe and been to shows there. You see some ridiculous stuff as far as accessories over there that we never even dreamed of, and you see it over there, and you go, "Oh, okay." That's the thing, huh?
Oh, I thought the one I had was rare. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And so, I wanted to also ask you about, because I know you used to be big into selling parts at all the shows and doing all that kind of stuff. Tell me a little bit about how the Samba, internet sales, eBay, all that stuff has kind of changed the way you sell parts.
Bottom line, I think, and I'm not mad about it because I'm guilty of it, but I think the internet has killed swap meets. That's just the bottom line. And I'm guilty of that because I sell parts online all day long. I got boxes leaving here all day long. That's what I do. It used to be go to a swap meet to sell parts so I could pay my bills. That was it. I needed to be at every single swap meet. I'd drive to Pomona every 6 weeks. I did all that stuff. And, I'd hit Bugorama, the first one. It was probably the biggest swap meet I've ever been to. And it was huge. And you just went there and you knew you were going to sell. If you didn't sell everything, you'd sell a lot of it because that's where they came to get their parts. Nowadays, people can sit home at 2 o'clock in the morning eating Cheetos in their underwear on their computer and buy whatever they want. And they do. So I'm going to take advantage of that. And I'm going to make sure I have stuff for people to buy that's online. And I don't have to go to the show, and I don't have to have somebody beating me up on the part, tell me he can find it 2 stalls down for cheaper. I just, now more so I go to car shows to hang out with my friends and see people that I wouldn't otherwise get a chance to hang out with.
Yeah.
But I still go to shows to sell stuff. It's not as
you just bring out the jewelry. Now you just bring out the jewelry.
It's not as aggressive as it used to be. There used to be a point in time where I had to be set up before anybody came in. I had to have my display on point. And, if this guy was going to walk by and I didn't have that part out there, he was going to get it from somewhere else. That was my train of thought. And it sounds ridiculous when I say it now because those same guys walk by you 10 times all day long. They don't buy the first thing they see. But now I just take out the stuff to make it look like I'm there for a reason other than just hanging out. And yeah, there's been times where I've driven to car shows and never unloaded a thing. It all sat in the back of the truck or my bus, and I sat there and BS with people all day long and then went home, but that's fun. So yeah. I wouldn't be mad at, the Samba or eBay or any Facebook even now for people selling stuff. It's great, but it definitely is taken away from the swap meet and the people showing up like they used to.
Well, yeah, and my point really wasn't like, are we blasting with hate or anything? But I think the dynamic has changed, and it's changed a little bit of that element of excitement of getting the swap meet early, trying to get through there before the next guy's there. I mean, I was going through pictures that I had from the 89 or 88 Jamboree that they used to have at Costa Mesa, and it's like a guy's got NOS single cab truck corners, and they're like $250. I'm like, and back then I was like, that's crazy, man. Who would ever pay $250 for that? But it's like all the NOS little parts and bits and pieces that you saw out there. But there was kind of that excitement, and that the dynamics of the internet have changed all that, but it's also made it super convenient. So you don't have to drive from here to Pomona and get rained out in the morning or any of those other shenanigans, or, stay up all night with one eye watching all your stuff, making sure nothing walks off. But, that being said, how do you find cool stuff now? Like so give us some tips and tricks out there to some of those in podcast land that are listening that like, they're just going to go on an adventure. What are some of the clues that you look for, and how do you track down some of these parts to keep your inventory up?
I can't tell you everything because then you wouldn't need me, but it's having a network of people who know what you do. There's still plenty of guys who have stacks of NOS parts. They're never going to get rid of all of them, but they'll dish them out, a little bit here, a little bit there. And it's just having connections. And, as much as the internet has changed things, there's also still a lot of deals go down behind the scenes that nobody ever hears about. And, I know there's people that are looking for things I have, so I take care of them. And people know there's things I'm looking for, and we kind of all help each other, I guess. And I don't know that, I used to take the trips to Europe and over there and buy tons of parts and bring them back, and that was great. But I don't think there's really any point to doing that now, because by the time I'm home with my stuff and have made it through customs, the guy I bought it from selling his leftovers still online and cheaper than I can afford to sell my stuff for now. So it doesn't work anymore.
So, but you didn't give me any tips or tricks. Give me some. I want a Craigslist tip from you. Give me one Craigslist tip as you're hunting, as being the master hunter. Give me a Craigslist tip.
Mistype Volkswagen. NOS rare is a good one to search. NOS accessory is a good one to search. That's your tip. That's your Craigslist tip of the day.
All right. Well, you had to get something out of you. I had to get something out of you. Well, cool, man. Hey, Greg, I've loved having the opportunity to sit down and chat with you, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. We've been hammering it out here for almost an hour now, so it goes quick. There's some great stories. If you guys happen to see Greg at a show, tell him what's up, and you know that he's always down to talk about dubs. He's a good guy. But it only goes so far. He's there to make a few dollars, so you might want to buy something from him or purchase some swag. Go visit his website. Anything you want to leave us with, Greg, before we sign out here?
I think we covered it. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth and say something dumber than I already have. So I'll just.
Well, I can loop that. I can just keep looping it. So.
Yeah. I just say, hey, thanks for having me, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about my little small thing I got going on here.
Well, right on. And give us your website one more time and how they can get you on Instagram.
VintageWarehouse.com is my website. The bike stuff is VintageWarehouse_bikes. I believe my Instagram for the shop, the VW stuff, is Vintage_Warehouse_VW_shop. It's probably not, but I think that's what it is. But if you check #VintageWarehouse, you'll find me, and you'll find some poor lady in England that has an antique store that's called Vintage Warehouse that probably hates every time I post up pictures of the buses and hashtag that, but that's her problem, not mine.
Well, and I think people also can search it just by searching Greg Banfill. They can probably pull you up quite a bit on Instagram and whatnot. So, hey, man, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know a lot of our listeners are going to get some stuff out. If you guys get any questions, anything like that, submit it to the podcast. Go to letstalkdubs.com, fill out in the comment section, type in any of your comments or questions you have, and we might talk about some of those on the air. I appreciate you coming on the show, Greg. Good talking to you, and I'm sure I'm going to see you coming up here at Kelly Park. All right, brother.
You bet. Right on. Take care. Thanks.
All right.
Volkswagen is a nice station wagon to have